Hello and welcome to this special BAFTA event, a Q&A for Make Me Famous. I'm joined by Brittney, who plays Billy, Emma Rigby, who plays Michelle, Colin Barr, who is the exec producer, and of course Reggie Yates, who is the writer. Welcome all. Thank you so much for being here. I should say that we have closed captioning available if you need subtitles. There's no embargo on what we talk about. Make Me Famous is on iPlayer now, and it's on BBC One on Thursday at 9 p.m. I'm probably going to talk about some parts of the plot that would be considered spoilers. I'm going to assume you've seen it, but if you haven't already seen it, I will flag up that it's a spoiler and you can mute us all for a minute or so that it doesn't ruin the suspense. So we'll talk until about 7 o'clock. We'll have a chat. And then if you could send questions via the Q&A function, as we talk, if anything comes to mind, send us a question, and then we've got about 20 minutes at the end where we can talk through those questions with the panel. So, Reggie, I think we should start with you. This was announced last August, but can you tell me how the idea came about? This is your first writing project, so I'm curious to know how you thought of it.
Well, first of all, I wish it was my first writing project because that would
is it not? It's a good start. We're starting well.
Jeez, I'd be bragging about this all day if it was the first thing I'd ever done. Now, I've been writing for quite a few years, but like most writers, you kind of keep things to yourself and are scared to show anyone for fear of massive criticism. But in the last 7 or 8 years, I started to share some of the things that I've been working on privately with my team. And as word got out that I was writing, I was actually approached for this by the lovely people at Expectation and Colin, to be specific. And sort of working with Expectation in the factual space on things like the Grenfell documentary that we made and a subsequent China documentary, the collaboration felt like it made sense, especially as, you know, the idea was going to have a factual spin on it. And once we got talking, it just felt like exactly the kind of project that I wanted to do.
Well, Colin, we should ask you then, what made you think of Reggie for this project?
Well, the project started, initially we were talking about whether we could make a documentary on the subject, but I think my feeling was that it would end up with us going around meeting lots of people and talking to lots of people in the past tense about their experiences on those shows, and that if we really wanted to do something that was psychologically interesting, the best way of doing that was to write a drama. And Reg and I had worked on a film about Grenfell. He talked about the fact that he was writing. We were talking about other projects to do. I had this thing sort of rattling around in my head a little bit. And we actually met to talk about a variety of things. And it was almost in the meeting that we started talking about it. And I could see straight away that it was a subject, obviously, that was really close to Reg's heart. And it almost felt like, it was one of those moments where you're like, of course, it's like, who's better to write this? And who would we rather work with on it? And all of Reggie's ideas were fantastic. He had a deep understanding of the whole thing. The working relationship was already really good and solid. And it just felt like a perfect sequence of events, really.
And in terms of Colin, obviously you have a lot of experience in factual programming, but in terms of making it into a drama, you talked a little bit about it then, but what was behind the decision to make it a drama rather than to go with the documentary idea?
I think the great thing about drama with certain stories, you're always asking yourself the question, why does this story need to be told in drama rather than documentary, especially when you're doing factual stories? And I think the feeling with this story was the only way of really taking an audience and putting them inside that experience in the present tense was to do it via drama. And you want to feel like what you're going to do is put the audience in the position of the central character, in this case, Billy, that's played brilliantly by Tom, so that they can start to imagine themselves in that role and sort of almost experience it as it's happening to him. And you could never do that in a documentary. You'd always be doing it in the past tense. And this way you can make it immediate and visceral and just psychologically much, much more rich.
I mean, Tom, the sympathy that the viewer has for Billy, it comes across from the very beginning, but were you at all concerned that something like the strife of being famous is not necessarily the easiest thing on paper to conjure up sympathy for?
I never thought about it. I always thought that Reggie's script really got that. And from the moment that I read it when I was auditioning, I always felt that I got in Billy's head. I mean, I'd met people who were in that world at events through working on ITV before. I'd met people on reality TV shows, and I'd sort of chatted to them before and kind of done, I guess, accidental research. And I thought what Reggie put on the paper was really good. And I always really felt for Billy, and I thought the script was really good at showing the human side behind the fame, which is why it's so important.
Reggie, can we talk about the research? Because it took a lot of research by the sounds of it. Can you explain a little bit about the process and what you did to kind of get these stories?
Yeah, well, to be honest, it's sort of a perfect storm, really, in a lot of ways, between the research and the experience of Colin. You know, Colin won't talk about his experience in this lane of factual drama, but, you know, we are essentially the newest iteration of a long line of dramas that have come through BBC Three that were actually kicked off by Colin with, I'll never forget our first meeting when I sort of kept talking about how much I loved My Murder, which was the first time I saw John Boyega on screen. And that was the beginning of this strand that we now belong to. So between Colin's experience and the research and sitting down with lots of different people from the reality world, from different shows, I think I definitely felt secure in knowing that whatever was going to be committed to the script was going to be not only true, but also be able to be told in a factual way as well as a dramatic way too.
Did anything, when you interviewed those, how many people was it who'd been on reality TV? It was quite a lot.
I think it was about a dozen, yeah. We spoke to a dozen, myself and the research team at Expectation.
And did anything come up from those conversations that you thought, actually, this is too far-fetched for a drama? Did anything surprise you?
Everything surprised me. I think when you sort of really get under the skin of what some of the guys who have come from these shows have actually experienced, it's mind-blowing. But I'm in a bit of a unique position as someone who's hosted reality competitions over the years. And much like Tom, you sort of come into contact with people from that world. And as someone who's hosted everything from music to entertainment shows, you sort of get used to this cycle of talent and faces that sort of come in and then go away again. And I sort of remember being really surprised at just how quickly certain people from the reality space would suddenly appear as the biggest thing ever and then disappear instantly. And it was almost a scarily quicker cycle than in pop music, which is what I was used to. So it always it was always on my radar as something that was just different and definitely harder in terms of the way in which it treated the people in question.
Emma, were you a fan of reality TV before you did this?
I'd never actually watched a reality TV show in my life before reading this script.
So what did the research involve for you?
I didn't actually do any research because I really strongly identified with the material that Reggie had written as somebody that had started on a TV show when I was 14 years of age. I kind of identified with the experience with the story and the piece itself, and for me it just resonated, and I saw each character that's portrayed within the film. I've been around, and it has some very personal ties to my own experience in the industry and as a woman in this world.
Yeah. Oh, that actually brings up a very interesting question, because Reggie, I was interested to know why you focused on a male character who comes out of this reality TV world, why he's at the center of it. Why that choice?
Yeah, I think that the role that men play in these sorts of shows is quite a unique one, really, particularly a young guy with a character like Billy. It's almost as though young men on these shows are expected to behave a certain way, and the character that we meet is definitely living up to that stereotype, but the layers beneath that are where we find out who Billy really is. And it just felt like a really fascinating person to explore if he were to have this level of bravado and notoriety, but quite clearly he was a very different person in real life.
Emma, why do you think Michelle is okay in the aftermath of her appearance on the show and Billy really isn't? What do you think she's got that he doesn't have?
I think that what she has, which I've spoken about before, is the team and the people around her. And I felt it was important that we think that somebody is a huge success, and it could be just the fact that they have the right management and the right, it's a creation. Michelle in herself is a creation. She's a persona. She's a character of herself. Would that be Reggie? Would that be kind of that?
No, exactly. Yeah, I'm annoyed that I didn't write that down somewhere, because that's pretty much it. I think that the key to all of the characters is just for us as an audience to find a way to empathize with them, because realistically, the people that succeed in these shows are everyman. They're people that we can see some of ourselves in, and Michelle was certainly that as well.
Yeah. And that's kind of what, and I think what Michelle was vulnerable, and she's willing to be vulnerable and relatable.
Can we talk a little bit more about your different experiences of fame? Because I know, Emma, you mentioned then that, you were on a TV show when you were 14. What was that like for you? That must have been quite life-altering to, if that's not an understatement. But what was that like for you to be thrust into the public spotlight?
Tell me now, as a 30-year-old with some maturity and had been working in this industry a long time, that I realize how it really deeply affects your psyche, and I don't think there's anything that quite prepares you for that. And for me, it was not having the right people around me. It's only now that I feel comfortable to be myself, and I'm at a place where I'm happy with it. And I've gone back to the love of my craft, which is I love acting. I've never really wanted to play the game and the celebrity kind of, but the understanding that you kind of have to embrace that. And also it's okay to be yourself. Whereas a lot of my life, I was told not to be that. And I listened to a lot of people, whereas now and it's kind of, which was great to do this piece. I don't know, when I read the script and I was just like, oh, I have to be in this. It's really poignant and personal to me. And it's, the synchronicity of the world that we're living in now, and how much culturally reality TV and TV entertainment influences, especially with social media. It forms our reference of life, really.
Again, can we talk about people's experience of social media? Because the program does such a good job of making clear that there's a human connection involved in these. You're tweeting someone, you're saying something mean, and there's a human being at the end of that, and it makes that very apparent. Is that something, Tom, that what's your relationship with social media like?
I've gone through slight phases of healthy and unhealthy. I think there's some real pros to it. I mainly use it for publicity for stuff that I'm working on, but I like to interact with fans of things that I've done, and showing a more human side behind the characters I play, showing a bit of me, which sometimes I like to think people are interested in. So it's it's a good chance for that. But then the darker side of it is the side that is shown in this, and a side that we are all so aware of is trolling and a sort of echo chamber of hatred, and that's the real problem that I have with it. And I'd love for it to be able to change somehow. I've been on the receiving end of people who at you and say something mean. It never, you try not to let it get to you. I'm lucky it doesn't happen too often, but it happens enough for you to kind of go, why have they felt the need to do that? Amanda Abington, who plays my mum, she had this wonderful idea, because she got off Twitter because she couldn't take it anymore. It was too tough on her. And she said that what she thinks should happen is that Twitter make it compulsory for you to verify who you are with a passport or an ID card or something like that, so that you can't hide behind an anonymous identity. If we change that, there's so many people who hide behind this, picture of a cat and then tweet, "Oh, I hated you on that show, you're ugly." Don't know if they do that if they had, Heather from Hull or something like that. I don't think they would do that. But I'd love to see it change, and just people being a bit more compassionate and understanding that the person behind the computer is a person as well.
Yeah. And Reggie, you've kind of grown up on our screens, and I feel like people have grown up with you. Do you think that's given you a sort of unique insight into fame? I feel like, as you said, you've hosted reality competitions and things like that. Have you seen all sides of it?
In a way, yeah. I, again, have a very strange relationship with fame. I was sort of raised in the industry to believe there is no such thing as star and fame. But obviously, over time, culture changes, and celebrity culture now is the dominant culture. And literally being a child in television, it was just something that I loved doing that people happened to see. And I never thought any more than that. And in a way, I'm really glad that I started in the entertainment business at the age that I did, because everybody that I was around was searching for a career and not much else. There was no social media when I started. So to have that strange, unique relationship with an audience where, having been on TV for 30 years, you've got people who have literally grown up with you. And when people stop you in the street, they talk to you like they know you, because in a way they kind of do. They remember your terrible mustache that you had as a teenager because they had one too. And they were watching you while you were presenting with a terrible haircut and a bad mustache. So I recognize that my experience is very unique in comparison to a lot of people. And as someone who was sort of stopped on the street before social media existed, I am not one who sort of needs the validation of social media, which is why I have a Twitter account, but I don't really use it. I tweet very, very infrequently, because I think the culture of that particular social network isn't the greatest. I'm much more of an Instagram person. I think it has a better culture. And I think for anybody who's new to this, it's a scary place, particularly if you have come into a level of notoriety through reality TV. It can be cutthroat. And I think that was a key part of Billy's story, exploring that element of it, because this script had quite a few different iterations. And as we went through it, the thing that became increasingly important was to make sure that no one corner of Billy's life was responsible for his downward spiral. And I think it's been quite commonplace recently, where people are solely blaming social media for the way in which some of these young people are being treated. Whereas I think that every corner of the business is responsible. And I think we all should take some responsibility in terms of how we treat and or feed into this environment that we're now living in.
Do you think, Colin, that there's something unique about fast fame? Because it feels like Make Me Famous really touches on this new sort of relatively new phenomenon of people becoming hugely famous very quickly. They're in our living rooms every single night of the week, and we feel like we know them. But it feels like it's a new phenomenon that's only kind of emerged in recent times.
Well, it's particularly because they become famous for being famous. Almost. They don't necessarily have a great talent, and they would be the first to say that themselves. And so they've got nothing to fall back on. So the fame becomes an end in itself. And I think when it becomes an end in itself, then you're sort of chasing your own tail, potentially. And of course, there's a whole queue of people waiting to replace you, and you've got nothing to fall back on at all. So when the next Billy comes along, then the old Billy is sort of done. And, one of the things that we used to talk about all the time with Reggie was that there's a point at which you've played a part for so long that you almost can't go back to the person you were. And it's not just that you can't go back, it's like the world you used to inhabit doesn't want you. So you can't go back to the old job, you can't go back to the old streets, sometimes you can't go back to your family. So everything that you used to be goes, then your fame goes, and then who are you?
I think clearly the show asks a lot of questions and poses a lot of questions, and asks its audience to ask themselves a lot of questions. But do you think there are any answers that can be found in it, Reggie?
Well, Colin, please feel free to shut me down here. But much like the documentaries that I make, one of which I made with Colin, I I tend to not like to end any sort of programming that I make with a full conclusion as if I'm the person with the answers. I think the best documentaries are ones that leave people asking questions and ideally having a conversation and being challenged in their point of view through consuming the content. And I think at the end of this, we ask a lot of questions, and rightfully so, because quite clearly nobody has the answer because these problems still exist. So for me, I think one of the biggest and most successful things that I felt off the back of people reacting to watching the film on iPlayer and on BBC One on Thursday night at 9 o'clock is that people are having a conversation, and that's the healthiest thing about it. I think we don't provide answers. We offer questions that are nuanced, and through the course of the hour, we deliver enough reason to justify every single question we ask.
I said that I would insert a spoiler alert when I was about to talk about specific plot points. So if anyone is watching and does not want to know what happens, now is a good time to mute for a good couple of minutes or so. But I'd like to talk about the ending, because the ending is bleak, and I think you make the choice that Billy doesn't die, but that is also bleak. It doesn't really feel like it's necessarily a happy ending. So I wonder if Colin, can you talk about the choices that were made around that ending? Because it felt like it could go in a number of different directions.
Do you know, funnily enough, and Reg, you step in if I'm going a bit far. I mean, we did have a number of endings in our heads, as you might imagine. Yeah. In fact, we almost shot different endings at one point, I think, just because it's so hard to know. It's very hard to know where you want to leave people emotionally after a story like that. And in some respects, the job becomes, can you take the audience to a point where all outcomes are still possible at the end? That emotionally you've taken them to the point where, and I am about to offer a spoiler here, where the question of whether Billy is successful in killing himself or not almost isn't the point. It's the fact that he was taken to that edge at all that is the point. But then, of course, you can say that, but you also you need people to feel like you've told a story that is, and this is not a great word, but satisfying in its own terms. And so you do have to find an ending that feels right, otherwise it doesn't feel satisfying or true. And we did agonize over that. We really did agonize over it. And to Reggie's point, we wanted to end with an ambivalence. So however it ended, we didn't want to end with judgment, and we didn't want to make it neat. We wanted it to end ambivalently, and that was the choice.
I think that the back and forth that I remember most was after writing a few different versions of how the story could actually end to great detail, the conversation about what would you do if you were Billy, do you remember, Colin, came up, and having that as being almost the leaving thought when we, push in on Billy at the end, and we see this character who's literally been taken to the worst place possible, but he is in that moment been offered everything that he's been fighting for and wanted. The question is, what would you do? And that, for me, speaks to the empathy we're asking the audience to have for some of these characters in terms of just how much they are pushed. I don't know, Tom, maybe you can sort of explain a little more about playing that, because literally there was so little on the page in terms of what we gave you, but what you delivered was exactly what we discussed during the writing process.
Well, I mean, what about the suicide scene at the end?
In the hospital, particularly.
Yeah, I really liked the ending that you chose. I mean, look, of course, there are people in that situation who don't get that second chance. And for Billy, I think that seems important to show the sort of hypocrisy and the cutthroat nature of the world after these things happen, or whether people do end up dying or are brought to the brink, is when, to see my manager character coming in and like a vulture just going straight into, we can do this as a media opportunity. I think that was really useful to have, to show, yeah, I think it was good to end with "What would you do?" I mean, I'd like to think I know what Billy would do. I'd like to think that he wouldn't take that opportunity, and I think he'd like to learn from that. I don't know. I liked that it was open and for people to sort of interpret, and like you said, like come away thinking, yeah, what would I do? And yeah, I think it was a really moving ending to choose that one.
Emma, as someone who has not watched much reality TV, what did you feel like you learned from it by being part of this?
I felt the piece not only was about reality TV, but it's very true to life and where we find ourselves as a planet and a community of living beings right now. Where I'm from originally is called St. Helens, and it has the highest rate of male suicide in the whole of the UK. And I feel like we're at the very limit, the edge of where a lot of people are in desperate need of help from whatever demographic you're from, whether you are on a TV show or you're unemployed, you're struggling to get a job. I think that it speaks not only, so I could identify it with my whole thing of reality was reality TV just shows the culture that we're in. It's just a representation of real life and the struggles that people are going with today. And it's an imitation. And it's kind of, where does that begin? The art and reality, it's all one. And it's this illusory, like, world we live in. And I think that I feel like it really touched a lot of people, and the feedback that I've been getting from people that I know, they said that it really took the breath away to see the piece on TV and to make people think and identify and be like, oh wow. And for those people that are needing help, I think it's a real, it gives you the confidence to ask for help and to reach out and speak about mental health issues.
I think the idea that a life can be produced and edited actually does go beyond reality TV as well. We're all on our phones offering a sort of version of what we're living. But I'm interested in the reaction to it. So it's been on iPlayer for a little while. Reggie, have people come back to you and kind of given you, I know it's not for you to say what people made of it, but have you had feedback, especially from the people that you interviewed, about it?
No, I haven't spoken to any of the people that I interviewed, but I am very fortunate to have an incredibly honest mother and group of friends. And the feedback that I've had consistently is, could we have picked a more handsome Billy? Very transparent in saying that we got the best that we could find in a very short period of time. No, people are into it because I think it does what this, for want of a better word, Strand has continued to do, and that is take an issue that is incredibly relevant to not just a young audience. These films play out on BBC Three primarily, but also BBC One, and it puts a spotlight on an issue that is affecting everybody's lives in some way, shape, or form. Be it a story that you read in the newspaper or a story about a character that you may have seen on screen. These issues are very real, and particularly if you are young and this is the sort of show that you love, it's it makes you and hopefully will see you look at these programs in a very different way. So for the people around me who will tell me if something's crap, thankfully they haven't, because I think they recognize this highlights something very necessary, and something very now.
Tom, could they have found a more handsome Billy?
Oh, no comment.
Thanks. That feels like a good point to end my questions, but there's a lot of questions that have come in from the audience, so I'm going to read these to you now. So this question is from Sam Downey, and it's a question for Reggie. What has the change been like from going from Radio 1 presenter and podcaster to TV presenter and now to writer? Has your creativity changed during the process?
No, I've always sort of said that regardless of what it is that I found myself doing, be it acting as a younger guy or making documentaries, without sounding like an absolute chief. It's telling stories, isn't it? And you can't say that without feeling like a proper plonker. But basically, storytelling is the reason that all of us get involved in this. And there is no more holistic process than sitting in a room with a producer and going through some ideas and eventually having a script, and then sitting there and watching actors bring it to life. So for me, it's just another version of telling a story, but in a different way, and to be really personal about it, the most fulfilling way for me. Drama is without doubt the most fulfilling version of that.
As a question from Ellis Witter, what was the hardest challenge you came across while researching and filming the show? Colin, maybe you can take this one to start with. What was the hardest challenge?
Time. It was a nightmare time-wise. So we just, I think from the point at which we started writing to filming, I think it was, 2.5 months or something? It was tight, wasn't it? It was, yeah. I'm looking at Reggie now, but I think it was about, it was tight. And of course, because of the nature of the story and the subject, it was incredibly sensitive as well. So the lack of time and wanting to make sure that the story we told was responsible and conscientious and sensitive was, we didn't want to put a foot wrong. We really didn't want to get it wrong. There was a lot, it felt like there was a lot at stake. So that was tough.
Yeah, I think the sensitivities of the issue at hand was paramount for all of us, really. Just ensuring that we were being as true as possible, and also doing justice to the characters that we wanted to put on the screen, and make them as human as possible as well. So in such a short time frame, to deliver something that felt real and felt honest was really important, and that was without doubt difficult.
We've got a question from Ivana Meehan White. She says, fantastic production. Reggie, as writer, how did you decide how to structure the storytelling, and what informed the choice of leaving out the middle part of the story, the reality show? So why did we not see any Love or Lust?
Well, full transparency, it changed several times, and I'm glad that we ended up where we did. I'm one of those weirdos who just likes to write things. So off the back of a very early conversation, I just went away and vomited out a draft that had, as they say, everything in it. And the art of the process, as I'm learning, the more I do, is sort of stripping stuff away and ending up with the best way to tell the story. And I think that what we have with the two strands, the interview and Billy's present day life, were the two most pertinent pieces of the story. So yeah, it was a stripping away process. But again, Colin's been here before, and I think with to again reference a show that he did forever ago, My Murder, Colin was working with, and I don't want to speak for you, Colin, but you were working with a real story, and intercutting between the factual element and the actual dramatic element, I imagine, has given him more than enough to help guide a writer like myself, and a new writer at that, to get to the heart of the story in the most important way. And I'm just really glad that I think we achieved that.
Tom, was there any point where you were disappointed that you weren't going to be sent away to a sunny desert island to film this reality show?
Of course, that's the only reason I signed up. It wasn't for that. No, I think it was good they didn't show it, because it left it completely up to the imagination what happened, and also because I'm sure a lot of the viewers have seen this, know exactly the kind of show that they can imagine in their head and what happened, and it's good to sort of see, yeah, this reaction afterwards of, you see it in the scene with me and Emma when I just go, I was edited and produced, so you can see that my character was not happy with how he was portrayed. I think that was powerful enough to not actually see it.
Although as Emma says back to you, you're not being produced now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the line of the
I've got a question from Janet Orr, who asked when development started on this and how long it took to make. And was it always, I think we touched on this slightly, but was it always a drama, or was it initially going to be a documentary? Colin, maybe you can take this.
Yeah, more than a year ago. when we started to, I think it was commissioned in August, so we talked about it prior to that, and as I was saying earlier, it was initially a documentary idea. It felt like it was a subject that was very close to the BBC Three audience's hearts, and we thought it was important and timely. But as I said earlier, it felt a little bit like the way to do it that would really move people was to do it in a drama, to really put them in the shoes of Billy. But it's, these things take a long time. In relative terms, actually, when you're doing it, it feels like you've got very, very little time. So the actual writing process took 2 or 3 months. The shoot was, how long was the shoot, Tom? 9 days. Yeah. So, which in TV terms is, in any terms actually, is time. So you don't have much, space for mucking about, and then you edit for a couple of weeks, and then it's done.
Emma, you're laughing there. That how long were you on set for? It can't have been.
I think 3 days.
Yeah. Well, I've got a question from an anonymous attendee. He says, Tom and Emma's performances are both fantastic. Congratulations. And then there's a question for Tom. What was it like working with Peter King? And that's from Heather from Hull.
That's from Peter King's
Peter,
mom.
that's from Peter.
Nice question, Heather from Hull. He can't be here today. He was a really great director. I mean, like we said, like 9 days is a tough shoot, and he was just brilliant to collaborate with in rehearsals, in the audition. When I auditioned, I'd looked up some of his short films and stuff, and I just, this is his first TV project. This is a pretty heavy one to be his first one, and especially with the short shoot that we had and the subject, and yeah, he was just a really good helmsman, Heather. He was a very, very good.
And I think collectively as a whole, like the entire team, that's what made it so great. It was great to be, for me personally, it was great to be part of a project where everybody is so talented and passionate about what they do. And, everyone came together and
everyone played their A game. I mean,
yeah. And that's what's interesting.
Kind of odd to say it was a fun set, with the subject matter. It was a really sensitive, strong set with every crew member and every cast member who came in, and obviously the script, everything came together to make it really good, because there are many things that if you're filming that short, it apart. I mean, the interview scenes, for instance, we filmed, that was 20 pages over 2 days, which again in acting terms is a lot of material to shoot really quickly. And yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better cast to be around and director to have, and script, everything.
Colin and Reggie, would you like to talk about Peter King, since, well, we're all talking about Peter King?
I'm Peter King's #1 fan. No, I mean, it's a great thing about BBC Three drama, actually, that it is a chance to give really, really talented people the opportunity to have their work seen by big audiences. And as Tom was saying, Peter had mostly done short films prior to this, and but it was obvious he was just really, really talented and kind of bursting to get this opportunity, and you could just see that. And I love the fact that BBC Three is a platform for that talent. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I remember the conversations that we were having about directors early doors, and I was pathetic in a lot of ways in just how much pain I felt in handing over something that I cared so much about to someone else. But the minute that I saw Peter's work, I knew that he was the right person for it, because visually what Peter does and has consistently done is incredible. And, I'm not blowing smoke here, but I think for anybody watching it, to know that that was done in 9 days and for it to look as good as it does look, it's unbelievable. So between Peter and the DP, I think visually what we saw was fantastic. And also, the director plays a huge part in the performances that we get to watch and enjoy. And so Peter, I think, did a great job.
Yeah, shout out to David Proctor, the DP, by the way, because it looks stunning. I mean, I remember being there on the set, and they made it look really beautiful. So yeah,
I've got to say, I wasn't there on the foggy day that was complete luck, wasn't it? That wasn't you. That wasn't like 50,000 steam smoke machines, was it?
No, that was all natural.
Sadly not. Although at the time it wasn't considered luck, because we were up, 10 floors up, a block of flats, with no view out of the window other than just fog. So it might as well have been a set. It was like,
I thought it looked amazing as well. You get that fog in the park as well, which I imagine was probably put on the same day, and it looks insane. It looks like it was completely deliberate. So I'm sure Pete's going, minute it.
Yeah. I've got another question from Basma Khalifa. Do you think there'll be a turning point in reality TV? And if so, what do you think will replace it?
Ooh, that's a difficult one. I think that's down to the audience, really, because fundamentally, channels will keep putting on what rates. And so long as people are watching reality TV, it will keep getting commissioned. I remember when reality TV started, and it was a social experiment. We were all excited to see what people were going to do in a house over the course of a summer. And we all got obsessed with Nasty Nick because he was writing notes. That was the worst thing that happened on that show. He was writing notes and peeing in the shower. Whereas now it's gone in a completely different direction. So I think as society changes and as we and our tastes as a community changes and progresses, so will what's being commissioned. It will only change and progress as we do, I think.
Colin, is there anything you'd like to add to that one?
From a producer point of view, I think maybe we've turned something of a corner. I think reality TV is it's a part of our world. It's fantastic and entertaining, but it also has risks, unquestionably. But I think that as producers, I think we're more aware than ever about the risks, and it's taken some really terrible things to happen, I think, for producers across the industry to maybe take it as seriously as they need to. It feels like that's the case now. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it goes with other shows in the genre, but it does feel like there's a level of seriousness now that wasn't there even a year ago.
And as a question from Charlie Lucas for Reggie, what drew you to wanting to create a piece like Make Me Famous? I think we touched on this a little bit in the Q&A, but
well, it just made sense as a piece that speaks to our time. We're in a moment where our relationship with reality TV is in question, just given some of the things that are happening and some of the knock-on effects of what should be entertainment. I think a lot of people are asking themselves the question, how much do I want to engage with this? And what part do I play in the greater conversation? So I think it's timely, and it just made sense to be a part of a project that speaks to something that is affecting the audience. As someone who spent the best part of the last decade making documentaries that do that, to be able to do that in drama is a gift. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm some hotshot writer that the BBC said, oh, that's definitely our guy. I was given a shot, and as a result, we have something that I think is really strong. And I'm not going to pretend that I did it by myself. I was guided really well by incredible producers like Sue and Colin, and we're lucky enough to have the actors that we have that have executed it in the way that has been done. So it is massively a team effort, but at the same time, it is a project that needed to happen now. And thankfully, a conversation has been started.
And there's another question from Charlie Lucas. This one's for Tom. How did you deal with having to deliver such a sensitive yet powerful scene at the end of the show?
It was tough. As just an acting thing, it's tough. And I remember that day, because you're nervous for that. You want to portray it really well. And again, luckily having Pete with you, we trusted each other really well, and I knew he was going to take me in the right direction with it. But I did have a little breakdown at one point, because separate from my character, where I remember I went to side with Pete, and I couldn't stop crying at one point, because I was like, it's just hit me that again that I'm portraying a situation that real people have been in. This moment of complete hopelessness that you think that's the only way out, and that hit me again, you know, because I said it's a really nice set, and you were handling it in a sensitive way, but you kind of got out your head that you were doing this fictional story. But then that was something that hit me, that yeah, there are people who feel that that's the only way out, and that was just, it broke my heart a little bit, and it made me again just realize how important it was what we're doing to show the effects that can cause these people that, you know, so people on social media or the audience on these shows forget are real people, and it shouldn't take this kind of thing to happen for producers to notice, or for people online to go, oh wait, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be like that. But it was a really tough thing to do.
And this question kind of follows on from that. This is from Miss CV Master Antonio. How can the industry change to become kinder and offer more support to reality stars? What do you think could be done? Colin, maybe this is one for you.
I think the biggest thing we can do is really make sure people understand what they're getting into. I think as producers, maybe we've not taken that as seriously as we might. There's been a tendency, I think, to just want those characters to come onto the show, and you worry about the vulnerabilities later. And I think we need to worry about the vulnerabilities first, and then the right people will get on the show. You don't know how people are going to react to the experience, but you can ask questions in a more rigorous way than I think we have till now. So I think it's really about making sure people are properly informed, and that people use the phrase duty of care all the time in television, like it's a phrase that's almost lost its meaning. Duty of care means treating somebody the way you would want to be treated. And I think if we work to that, we'd probably go a long way.
And I think there's one last question, which is out of curiosity. This is from an anonymous attendee, but not Heather from Hull, I don't think. Out of curiosity, why did you decide to make it a single film as opposed to a series? Reggie?
Well, I think this is more of a Colin question, but I think he'd agree with me in saying that, you know, that this is the strand. You know, there is a legacy of single dramas that deal with issues that really do affect the BBC Three audience, from My Murder, which I've mentioned a few times, right the way through to Murdered by My Boyfriend and, you know, Killed by My Debt most recently. These films are important, and they speak to issues that really do affect the audience. And I think a single drama is a really smart way to attack it, because you've got an hour to not only deliver a message, but also make people think. And a point can get laboured if you're doing that over 4 hours or 6. And we sort of have no choice but to really put it in your lap and say, look at this thing that's happening when you're trying to manage something as complicated as this in 60 minutes. So I think that there is something really special about doing it in an hour, because that way you can't hide from it, or you can't run from the issue at hand.
Yeah. And we should say again that it's on BBC One on Thursday night at 9 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone. That was really, really great. It was lovely to speak to you all. And yeah, I hope that everyone enjoys the show who hasn't seen it already. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Bye.
All right. Thank you.